A little while ago, we covered the insane hit piece that was uploaded by the YouTuber ILoveKimPossibleALot. A video that was supposed to be covering insanely serious allegations, but filled the video full of memes and just a bunch of stuff that either didn't prove her points or wasn't relevant. But today, we have a massive update on the situation as Saberspark has responded on his main YouTube channel. The response is about 20 minutes, and it covers basically everything drama-related that Saber's been involved in, from the allegations he's facing to his defense of Black Griffin. It's all here. Now, we're going to go through this whole video, and I'm going to be as brutally honest where I can, because I do agree with most of what Saber says in this video, but there are some slight things I disagree with him on. But before we delve into that, you should subscribe so I can feed my starving family. Plus, I don't know, I think it'd be pretty cool. So to recap before we even get into the video, Saber was getting shit for defending Black Griffin, as well as facing anonymous allegations of inappropriate sexual conduct that were promoted by the Brony Fandont Twitter account. The allegations against Saber personally had no evidence behind them and were made anonymously, so there's nothing concrete there, and as of now it's just verbal testimony. Saber's video is him just head-on addressing the allegations. He even uses a face cam for the whole thing. He starts the video off with addressing ILoveKimPossible's video on him. Out of the gates, he calls it clout chasing, which I think every person involved here can agree that's definitely what the video was. He also makes a note of how the video in general was handled, with her making a whole shit ton of allegations and placing them alongside terrible edits of like Seinfeld and then memes as well. Not a good way to handle making allegations. Now, Saber is just flat out denying the allegations. Not surprising, of course, obviously he denied them, and as I previously stated, there's no evidence to back up these claims against Saber, so there's no reason to not believe him. Saber is also calling Kim's video on him a hit piece, which I think is another thing most people who were unfortunate enough to watch that video concluded it was. Now, Saber actually goes on to claim that Kim and the Brony account worked together to push the story. The Brony account initially denied this after Kim's video came out, but as Saber is going to go on to prove, there might be more merit to this than we initially believed. He goes on to talk about how Kim's video was just incredibly insulting to people who are actually victims of sex crimes, and as it turns out, might have actually really damaged Kim's channel when she talked about it in an interview. But we'll get to that later. This entire segment of his video, though, is going to be Saber addressing his story with Kim, something that she briefly talked about in her initial expose video. According to Saber, the two of them were basically internet friends, with Kim sometimes reaching out to him to ask for advice when it comes to videos. He was also in a relationship with someone else at this time, but in Kim's original video, she alleges that Saber asked her out. Saber is essentially denying this, though. He goes on to say that since they weren't super close, naturally they drifted apart, and he hadn't heard from her for a while. That is until 8 years later, when he was messaged about that Chris guy Kim talked about a whole lot in her video. The thing is that she had someone message Saber on her behalf despite having the capabilities to message him herself. So, since she didn't message him herself, Saber thought it wasn't super important, so he talked to his editor, the Chris guy, and his editor said everything was resolved. Then, a full calendar year later, Kim blasted Saber on Twitter for everyone to see. Here's where things get interesting though. In Kim's video, she claims Chris jerked off into a pile of her clothes. Saber, though, is now claiming that the only thing that ever happened was Chris made a sex joke about Kim 10 years ago. But where this really gets interesting is Saber included the call Kim had in her video in his response. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but something is most certainly off here. Let me explain. Here's part of the call in Saber's video.
Was an absolute horrible person so many years ago, and you didn't deserve that. So,
all right. So I don't really have anything else that I feel comfortable saying.
Now, here's part of that same call from Kim's video.
Was an absolute horrible person so many years ago, and you didn't deserve that. So,
right. So I have a couple of things. So my source says,
I think it should now be apparent, considering the fact that the same conversation is happening, but it still drifts apart in two different directions. Someone's video here has an edited version of this call to make it something else. Like I said, I have no idea who's responsible for this and what the real version of events are, but one of these two used an edited version of this call to fit their narrative. Saber does also include part of the call that wasn't in Kim's video, in which she seemingly did leave on decent terms with Chris, which is definitely something she did not make clear in her original video, as that wasn't included in the call. Saber also plays part of the call in which Chris expressly says that Saber was unaware of the situation he was in.
Okay, so, you're not in an environment where this would have come up anyway.
Never.
So he would probably be unaware.
Never. He's 100% unaware. Like, again, I can't stress enough is that in the times I ever told the story, It was, as you described it, locker room talk with a very small amount of people in a private call.
Once again, this was left out of Kim's video for seemingly no reason. It is definitely strange that Saber refers to it as a joke, though, when the original allegation was Chris masturbating on someone's clothes. Especially since Chris admitted to that on video, so even if he didn't know then, it should be obvious to him now that it wasn't a joke. But to be honest, that's kind of a minor point in the grand scheme of things. Saber also shows off the completely unhinged emails that Kim sent him. We went over those before if you want to check them out in full. But now, Saber's gonna rip into her video. Kim did an interview with a commentary YouTuber, and it's an hour long, and a lot of the stuff she says in that interview are very relevant to this situation. Saber plays part of the interview Kim did where she admits to putting in these allegations with zero evidence behind them, as well as another clip of her saying it's entirely fair to disregard them due to lack of evidence. However, the one clip I thought Saber would include, though, is where Kim admits to helping write the anonymous testimony that was posted on Twitter.
The allegations is that Saber, by coerced consent, basically raped someone. So I worked with the victim pretty directly throughout all this. I helped them write the testimony that was on Twitter.
Which is insane. It's just a massive conflict of interest. Saber also does point out a very big hypocrisy when it comes to the Brony Fandont Twitter account. That account promoted Kim's video, but later threw Kim under the bus when the video turned out to be dog shit. Saber points out that either they watched the video and approved it, or didn't watch Kim's video and just signal boosted it anyway. Either way, that looks bad. That looks awful for them. Speaking of that Twitter account, it's time for them to be addressed directly. Now, I talked about this account briefly in the Black Griffin situation video and the other video on Kim, but to put it simply, this account and the people running it are deranged. I mean, they've talked about how vigilante justice is the best kind of justice instead of, legal shit.
And launch vicious harassment campaigns against multiple online creators, such as Billy Bustup, Prince Whateverer, and Black Griffin.
Now, this is the only mention of Black Griffin in the entire video, and it's a little crazy. Considering before the anonymous allegations, this was and still is the biggest reason to hate Saber, the fact it only has a small mention is wild. I'm not going to go over those allegations as I've covered them before. If you want to check them out, just go watch the video. But after doing my own research on the topic, there are legit reasons to think that Black Griffin sucks. Another thing I gotta call Saber out for is that he says the Brony account has used falsified evidence to attack people on multiple occasions, but he just shows one example of a Twitter exchange where someone says they're lying, to which the Brony account denies it. I'm trying to be fair and impartial here, so I'm gonna need a little more than that to call them liars. I'm not saying it's a false claim entirely, I'm just saying I need a little more proof before I can back it up. Saber also does point out that the people who ran the Brony Fandom Twitter account were very obviously in bed with Kim, which is another thing neither of those two ever thought of mentioning. We'll take another look at the Brony Fandom account later, but for now it's time to move on to the last section. I would have talked about the online vigilantism, but it's more or less just Saber talking about how he's disappointed with the current state of the internet, as well as the damages he's suffered because of these false allegations. He talks a little bit more about how the situation is massively disappointing, and with that, the video ends. Overall, it's a good video. He points out the malice behind the two biggest people involved in promoting the allegations against him, and points out that the allegations against him are baseless and entirely denies them. Now, before we wrap this whole thing up, I do want to look at some of the Brony Fandom's tweets after this came out. More specifically, one tweet in particular. I've been trying to avoid the Saber situation, as it is highly triggering for me, and unlike the Black Griffin situation, I don't have a ton of knowledge on it. I want to be able to contribute productive information rather than just yell. Please give the victim time to respond. So, couple of things. First of all, I've been trying to avoid the Saber situation? Bro, you are the one who platformed the initial allegation. What the fuck do you mean you've been trying to avoid it? As well as unlike the Black Griffin situation, I don't have a ton of knowledge on it. The only knowledge that is publicly available is because of you. How are you trying to act so lost and confused during the situation when you're the one who platformed the allegation in the first place? No one knew about this before you. They also had a complete meltdown on Twitter that, for comedic reasons, I will now read very dramatically. This is what fucking happens when you speak out against rapists. You win. Everyone, I'll shut up. I'll never do it again. Griffin would be fine if I didn't help. And that's because no one else fucking tried enough. And you'll make sure no one ever does again. Saberspark, raped a girl, and you're all overjoyed to rip my throat out for him like a Mortal Kombat fatality. You defeated me. Congratulations. Lesson learned. There is no good in this world. People would do everything they could to destroy it if there was. Okay, so this is psychotic, flat out. There's no other way to say it. This person is insane. And apparently the person who wrote this is being administered to a hospital. Good, they clearly need to be there. I don't think I need to even point out what's wrong with this, with these statements, because it should be glaringly fucking obvious. The Brony account is a sham, ran by fucking crazy people, and to be honest, we should probably never believe them again. I mean, it sounds rough, but that's the safe way to go about this. Kim is a dishonest hack who should never be taken seriously ever, and Saberspark, not a rapist. If anything, he appears to be just a victim of some very malicious people. That's not to say he escapes without criticism. Like I said, the Black Griffin stuff, I did my own research when it came to Black Griffin. That guy's weird, okay? That guy talked about how him and a 16-year-old could potentially get married when she turned 18, all the while he was 25. There are legit reasons to criticize that guy, and by extension Saber for defending that guy. But that's where my criticisms of Saber end. If you want to criticize him by that, it's entirely fine. But to call him a sex criminal in any regard over allegations that we know for a fact they were written alongside someone who admitted to hating him, I think it's safe to say those allegations should just be thrown out. Anyway, to end this, Saber isn't a rapist or a sex criminal or anything of the sort. Hell, now we can't even be sure he was aware of the allegations his employees faced. If you want to criticize him for a stance on Black Griffin, that's entirely fine, but don't go harass him or any of the other people involved. You just look like a jackass. Anyway, that's where I'm gonna end the video. I don't know. Join the Discord server, follow me on Twitter, and subscribe, I guess. Yeah, it would be cool. Anyway, I don't know. Later.